that she's back in the atmosphere with drops of Jupiter in her head. She acts like summer in...
Hey guys, FilmCrazyAdam here. I'm about to go off and see Jupiter Ascending with Otaku J. It'll be my first went to the movies for 2015. Though, to be honest, this wasn't originally planned to be a went to the movies. I watch, a bunch of movies just so I have a huge pool to draw from, but I don't review all of them in a went to the movies format. This one actually, the last review I did with Jay for The Hobbit Part 3, he actually had like a mini poster on his coffee table, and I was like, oh, what's that? And he's like, oh, you haven't heard about this? It's called Jupiter Ascending, and here, I'll show you the trailer. And I was like, well, that looks okay. I hope it's good. Maybe it'll be good. You want to do a went to the movies review? And I was like, wasn't planning on it, but alright. So, I'm about to go see this movie. Now, my thoughts going into this movie, I try to avoid any kind of reviews or huge spoilers, whether the reviews are written or video reviews. I try to avoid reviews for movies that I'm going to go see and plan on reviewing. Though, for this movie, to be completely honest, it's impossible to avoid when you're on the internet. It's impossible to avoid anything, And so my homepage opens up to yahoo.com, and so it's impossible for me to avoid such headlines as terrible movie people walked out on, or one of two huge bombs this weekend. And yeah, so a lot of people seem to think that this movie's gonna suck. Now, here's the thing. Here's my thoughts going into this movie. Drawing from the trailer, I don't know what to expect, which is actually a failing on the part of the person who edited the trailer. Because here's the thing about trailers. Trailers are supposed to give you kind of an idea, a taste, a basic understanding of what the story is, but that there's so much more to it. And it's supposed to get you interested and get you in the theater. So it's like, in a time long ago on a planet far away, two tribes are fighting for the survival of their race, of their planet. Or, coming to a new town isn't always easy. But for little Timmy, things are about to get really interesting when he finds a magic box in the woods. Stuff like that. Stuff really simple. Or, waking up should be easy. But what happens when you wake up and you're not who you thought you were? You wake up in someone else's body. Dun, dun, dun! That's kind of what a trailer should do. Like, you get an understanding. Let's go with the idea with the trailer. Trailers are supposed to pull you in. They're supposed to be like, okay, I get it. It seems to be about a romance, or okay, it's a war movie, or it's an action adventure, but there seems to be something between these two characters. Maybe there's more to it. Oh, there is more to it, but I'm not quite sure what. And so that's what gets you into the theater. The trailer tells you a little bit of a story, and it intrigues you, and you kind of have a basic understanding. So someone asks, oh, what movie are you going to go see? Oh, I'm going to see this movie. Oh, what's that one about? Like, something stupid and silly. Penguins of Madagascar. You watch the trailer for that, and you get it right away. If you've seen the Madagascar movies, you kind of know more going into it, but you get right away, okay, these penguins are, they're kind of a crack team. They're almost ninja-esque, very CIA, very Bourne Identity-esque. And then this other group comes along and picks them up, and they're going to be taken on a mission. Ooh, what's this mission? What's going on? Who's this other group? And so you get the idea of it's a light-hearted comedy romp with a huge spy twist to it. And so you're like, all right, I'm interested. I'll see more of that. Jupiter Rising? Jupiter Ascending? I don't know what this movie's about. I think it has something to do with Mila Kunis's, like, reincarnated royalty. I mean, they said that in the trailer. She's like reincarnated royalty. I don't know how that's working, and like it might have something to do with our planet. Like it seems that our planet may be in peril, may not be in peril. It may belong to someone else. It may just be like one of like 18,000 planets somebody owns. I don't know really what this movie. And is she being assassinated, or is she being kidnapped, or this movie's trailer doesn't give you a ton to go on. And so so right away I'm like, I have this feeling, one of two things. Either there isn't enough story to make a coherent trailer, or there's way too much story that they put into this movie and they can't really decide where to go with this trailer. So, which honestly, I think that's the thing. This movie, just by looking at the trailer and the expansiveness of what this world seems to encompass, I think this movie, and I think it's going to suffer big time from this, there's a lot to this movie. Like, there's a lot. There is going to be so much more. It's going to be so needlessly complicated and so much more substance than you need. And that's actually kind of a curse and a problem. And if you're a good filmmaker, you can overcome this problem. But that problem is you've only got 2 hours to tell a story. You've got 2 hours to get people interested, introduce them to characters, introduce them to the story, introduce them to the world, and have it all work together into a coherent, good story. I don't think this movie is going to do it, honestly. So, I don't know what to expect from this movie going in, but I feel like it's going to fall on its face. It's going to trip over its feet. And I don't want it to be bad, as always. I don't want to waste my time. But I'm not having high hopes for this movie. But I'll tell you more in a little bit. Gotta see the movie, then you'll see me with Otaku J. Laters. Hey guys, FilmCrazyAdam here again with
Otaku J. How you guys doing?
And we just came from seeing Jupiter Ascending, which you guys have already seen what I said before going into the movie. I'm not gonna ask you what you thought, because I already kind of know how you feel after the movie. This is more of a comparison review as opposed to what we've been doing, because this is actually, there's a clear divide coming out of the movie.
Yes.
I didn't care for it. You did.
Team Jupiter. Yes, I actually enjoyed this movie. For me, this movie was like a throwback nostalgia movie to those old 80s and early 90s sci-fi movies like Ice Pirates and stuff like that, where it's just like, it's all about the action, it's about the adventure, and it's about the
and nothing
ride.
About the story. Or the story doesn't really matter if it comes to the action.
I enjoyed the story. It's a very simple and straightforward story. It's not like one of these, oh my god, I'm blown away by the story, because there's a very, at this point in cinema history, we have seen so many of the same stories done over and over again, in different ways, in different formats. This is a movie, if you're just going to, it's a popcorn movie. You're going to enjoy the fun, enjoy the ride.
I didn't even enjoy the ride. I mean, because my problem, we went to go see it in 3D, only because the standard wasn't until much later in this afternoon. I prefer standard over 3D, because I think it's just a gimmick. But in an action movie, 3D, it just doesn't work, because so much is happening on screen, and they're trying to create depth with the graphics and everything.
See, this is the point where me and him actually do agree, because for me, it's like, while I did enjoy the 3D for most part, with the action scenes, because of the way the 3D is set up, I found was very distracting. I found the world to be very beautiful to look at, very gorgeous, but with a lot of the 3D and CGI combined, you had so much stuff going on.
You're going to see me grabbing my head during the review, because like I have a headache forming right here from 2.5 hours of CG and those. I actually think there was way too much graphics, and not just the 3D effect. The entire movie, almost the entire movie, is just CGI. They had very few practical sets. You can tell that they're just in a giant auditorium-sized room of green. They're not seeing anything. They're not acting in response to anything. They're just kind of acting against each other, but you can tell that.
But for a movie like this, it actually works. I mean,
you
obviously don't agree, but for a movie when you try to tell this epic space story,
it was not an epic story. It was not epic.
It's a space story. It's
not a space story.
Opera. It's actually
It's
space
not,
opera. Yes,
no,
it is.
it's a story that took place in space. This is not a space story. This movie, in a nutshell, are 3 siblings quibbling over inheritance.
And this poor girl caught in the middle.
This poor girl, by the way, who is the reincarnation of their dead mother, their murdered dead mother, which that already calls in, like, there's so much this movie doesn't make sense and flies in the face of logic, and that was one of the first things where they go on to explain reincarnation as the random reaccumulation of genes and atoms.
See, this actually movie deals with a lot of things they've touched on sci-fi about, like genetic reincarnation. They brought in also, they played off a lot of was modern mythos, like the gray aliens and crop circles, and other stuff like that they've thrown into the movie that I thought was a nice nod and a wink.
I didn't think, well, the thing about that, though, is that they weren't using any imagination. Like, yeah, we've seen this stuff already, and if we're not going to focus on those things and put a new spin on it, but they were just window dressing. Like, the crop circles were there, and the crop circles were there for one shot when this spaceship lifts off, and I think we're supposed to believe that the spaceship landed, and that's what caused the crop circle. But we don't focus on it. It's just kind of like, there's crop circles.
But there's certain things, that's the charm of it. It didn't need to focus on it because
it's just like, why are you going to put it there?
Because it's like, okay, this is how they're explaining. It's like they've set up in the movie that
they didn't explain it.
They didn't need to. You gotta have the imagination to take that. Okay, I see where they're going with this. When they had like the gray aliens, the crop circles basically were describing the trails that left when alien ships left off, which has been one of the ongoing crop circle theories. It's just minor stuff like that I thought was a neat wink to pop culture. And if you wanted more on that, I think you're expecting too much.
Why should I expect too much from a movie? If you're going to spend that much money and then market it like you did, I deserve something for it. If I'm going to spend my money to go see your movie, it had better be good.
Because it was such a minor thing, it really did.
Well, if it was such a minor thing, or if that's where they were going with it, they should have stuck with it.
It was a way to set up the mythos. See, the thing is, for me, it's one of these movies, like, if you can, if you can, as I said, turn off your brain, just sit back and enjoy the movie, and like, okay, this is the world they're selling, this is how they're explaining itself without telling you blatantly. Certain things I don't think you need to actually explain bit by bit by little bit. Sometimes all it takes is a scene. You see, like, the gray aliens. Okay, this is how they're explaining the gray aliens without having to put it in your face. It's not one of these...
They didn't explain it. They're just there.
Yeah.
And they run with it.
They didn't need to explain any more than other...
I'll take it a step further. Here's this movie... My problem with the gray aliens... My problem with the gray aliens, and a number of things, is that this movie had a way of... Or this movie was very guilty of... They would introduce something, and then they were gone. And you never heard from them again. There are these 3 bounty hunters that are introduced basically in the first minute of the movie, which they have like 2 scenes, and then they are never heard from again. They didn't even complete their job. Wait, no, they did.
Their job was simply to bring her back.
Yeah.
You basically had these factions within factions. The movie did have sometimes way too much going on because you had these 3 siblings and you had these 3 factions that were working for the siblings. And you had these siblings. It was somewhat over convoluted.
It was needlessly complex. You did agree with me with that.
Some of the plot was overly convoluted. I liked the idea where they were going for, but sometimes it just got a little bit too involved with itself. It could have been, they could have had the stuff cut out, even replace one of the siblings with the other. Even if they had removed one sibling, or made that one sibling a side character.
Because the sister, they introduce all 3 of these siblings at the beginning, and there's something creepy about them. Like, I'm not sure if the one brother and the sister are kind of doing it. I don't know, but they didn't deny it.
I really didn't get that vibe from them, but like it was one. There was this really weird sibling dynamic, but one of the biggest problems.
Okay, and all right, I don't know if this is spoilers. Okay, yeah, spoilers. I'm going to jump into spoilers right now. That it's not a big spoiler, I don't guess. Planets are seeded by this family. Like, it's not.
This is actually explained.
Yeah, it's not. It's not life, or it's not life. It's a farm. That's the term they use. You guys are farming. We somehow turn humans into a glowy liquid, which I think extends life. It's the fountain of youth.
It was their version of Solent Green, except it was Solent Blue and glowy.
It was blue and glowy and made you live forever. So it was different than Soylent Green, but same but different. It gives you immortality if you drink enough of this stuff. And so that's all that planets are. They see planets, and millennia later they come by, and then they just kill everybody, and then turn them into glowy stuff. That is money.
That is the harvesting you hear about in the trailers.
Yes. And so this entire thing, there's very little gravitas in the whole situation, because it's everything about this movie it's not spurred on by anger, by passion, by love, by hatred. It's just business. The entire movie is just politics. So Earth hanging in the balance, they really don't care. It didn't have to be Earth. This could have been Vulcan, this could have been Romulus, this could have been any planet. It just happened
to be Earth.
And
that's probably one of the things. This is why you kind of said you felt like you were kind of betrayed by the promos. That
I guess betrayed might be, or I was lied to by the promos.
And it's like
it seemed like an epic, you're saying, it's an epic space battle with the future of Earth and all of reality in the balance. No, it's just this guy's like, well, that's in my jurisdiction. I don't care if you were born there. I don't care if you're the reincarnation of my mother.
This is definitely much more of a political drama.
Yeah.
And that's, if you kind of go into the movie expecting to watch this political drama with some intrigue going in.
If you're expecting Star Wars, you're not going to get it. Come back to the theaters.
It had some Star Wars elements to it. There were very nods and winks in the way certain scenes were set up that had like this Star Wars, even Star Trek-like feel. But like this, like I said, this movie is kind of, for me, it was just a fun, almost nostalgia movie, because once I kind of got where this movie was going, it's like I went in expecting really nothing. I actually kind of went in a little bit worried about this film initially, and I was actually pleasantly surprised. This movie for me, it had a charm. I thought this was just a fun ride, maybe a little bit too long, maybe about like half an hour or too long.
Yeah, this movie, I honestly felt like it was taking forever. I started to fall asleep about halfway through during the entire sequence where she is running around trying to get her title as queen, that too. Well,
I thought that was fun. I thought that was fun. It was neat, but it did drag out a little bit. Long.
It was cute. It was clever.
It was so overly mundane.
Yeah, it was overly mundane. There were one too many steps. It was a very old joke. Like, they didn't do anything new with this movie. Everything is old hat with this movie. And I'm like, oh, I get the joke. I see where you're going with this. 5 minutes later, are we still doing this? And it just didn't fit in the movie.
It's it was kind of the point. At least for me, it's supposed to show no matter how technically advanced or how political and red tape and just bureaucratic this world really was. And it's like in many ways,
the entire movie is just bureaucratic red tape.
It's like that's kind of like, I think they're almost nod wink about how bureaucratic our society's going. She discovers she's the queen of she's
told that she's the queen.
Yeah, and she's told she's the queen of the universe. Instead of having this big coronation like you expect her to go through, no, she has to go through this bureaucratic DMV-like experience.
And they even say it. I'll never complain about the DMV again.
Where they have to fill out all these different forms. It's like
running from department to department.
And like I completely agree with you. They do drag out the scene. They also drag out some other scenes a little bit too much.
Most of the fight scenes, I would argue, were like 1 to 5 minutes too long.
I actually thought the action scenes were some of the best parts about this movie. I love the action scene, with the exception of where the CGI just got too distracted. I love the action scene.
Well, you heard me. at points in the movie where I was just throwing in my own commentary. There's towards the end, there's a scene where the girl is falling, and we know that Channing Tatum's on his way.
Of course, because he's the hero of the film.
And I'm just like, and I'm sitting back in my chair, I'm like, oh my God, she's falling. Who on earth could possibly save her? Ah, she got saved.
Now, one of the problems we also had of this movie, I know you might have heard this before, but the main antagonist spoke like this.
He
Damn time.
He spoke like somebody who, while bored, was old and
very
tired.
monotone and very soft.
He
Except
never-
a few times when he spoke like this.
Only 3 times did he do this, and he's always condescending and just...
It was really hard to hear sometimes. It's just like, I think he kind of tried a little bit too hard.
That guy was...
They need to either have him dial it up, dial it back. Because I've heard seen other things from this actor before, and he's actually not a bad actor, so I almost wonder how much was a character choice or the director or for the actor, or said, listen, you just need to dial it up or dial it back. I understood the effect he was going for. It was a little bit, it did get very annoying.
If you've seen Highlander Endgame, the villain in that, he talks like him. That guy was such a boat.
Mary Van Peebles, when he played the wizard, he had the rival. Yeah, he wasn't quite that soft-spoken, but
He
it was
close. He was just as insufferable. That guy was such.
Mary Van Peebles, at least in Highlander Endgame.
We're talking about the guy with the blue lipstick from D&D, right?
That's
Highlander
him. Okay, I'm thinking Marvin Peebles.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, what?
He wasn't quite that bad, but yeah, he was. It was just like very monotone. You're supposed to get the impression of this guy being a spoiled, selfish brat, and you kind of got. He did the face. Physically speaking, his physical acting was awesome. It's just his vocally, he was just so soft and so monotone, as just like. If they had cut out a few characters, cut out a few scenes, they could have streamlined the movie a little bit more. I think they might have got a little bit much better movie. But like this is not a Oscar movie. This is not one of those mind-blowing movies. This is just a this is a fun.
This should have been released to Sci-Fi Channel and put on the Saturday afternoon. That's where sci-fi movies that for some reason were made, that's the only place that they're allowed to be because no one else will watch them elsewhere.
I think it's like
but that guy was such a boat anchor around this movie's neck.
Yeah, I think that it's like I think this movie will be one of those movies that do really good on cable because it's just a good TV action flick. I think maybe it even been done better if they had done a mini-series on TV as opposed to doing a big action movie, because as a mini-series you could have
stretched it out a little bit
more. Yeah, you will be able to
explore
explore the world, because you did get a sense that there was a lot in this world and a lot of really neat things that they were setting up. That I was almost wondering, like, okay, was this based on something else? It made me interested. Like, if this was based on like an anime series or even a manga series or a comic book, I would like to pick up the comic book simply so you get the stuff that they're not exploring.
I even said that in my pre-movie recording that I felt that this movie the trailer was really muddled up with so much stuff that I'm like, I think they're trying to put way too much in this movie, and maybe that was the case. Though, to be fair,
you realize our opinions almost the reverse that we were when we were watching Dracula.
Was it?
Oh,
no, I didn't care for Dracula that much.
Yeah, but you seem to enjoy Dracula a little bit more than I did.
I did enjoy it a little bit more, but that's
here or there.
Yeah, but to be fair, the Wachowski brothers have kind of been circling this movie. Actually, no. I like Speed Racer. You know, that wasn't a good tangent.
You like Speed Racer?
It was actually pretty loyal to the source material. Kind of like G.I. Joe was loyal to the source material as well.
I'll give you that with G.I. Joe.
But it was actually you could tell it was a live action version of that. Sorry about that. Yep. We gotta figure out some better place to record than your place.
Obviously.
Anyway, but the Wachowski brothers.
I don't think they couldn't go the full route of M. Night Shyamalan. I do think they need to...
Oh, they're running at it pretty hard, though.
Yeah, I think they need to dial it back a little bit more. It's like the idea of Jupiter Ascending I thought was really neat. even if I'd love to see this world explored more. Me personally, I'd love to go back to this world again if I got the opportunity. I don't think it will ever happen, but it was a neat concept, and it would almost be cool to hear what they do. It's neat enough. I would like to see what happened afterwards.
I agree with that. If they turned it into a book series, I might be interested in reading it. Or had they stretched it out, I might have been interested in that. The problem with a movie, and this is something that many movies suffer from, is that they're trying to explain everything to you and get you to comprehend and understand all the little subtleties in 2 hours. Yeah. And that is a challenge about making movies. You have to make a concise story. You can't leave too many plot holes, and you can't depend on that they're going to read the books or that they already have read the books so that they can understand your movie, or that they played the video game or the comics. Yeah. You need to explain everything to the audience in this 2 hours.
I don't think you need to explain everything.
Well, maybe not everything, but you need enough for them that they come into the movie they come out of the movie with less questions that they came into.
Yeah, but then again, I think you also where I would disagree. I think you should leave enough questions to have people want to come back and more. What happens afterwards? That's one thing with this movie. I'd like to see what happens after.
Sure, no.
I think it's like they're like, what's the whole Legionnaire thing? Where like some of the other races come from, where they play a part. Like the whole political thing, even the other family members, I would like to see where they go there. I think they're trying to get.
It'd be interesting to understand their rise of power.
Yeah.
Are there other families involved? What's the overall hierarchy in the universe?
I kind of think with this movie they're trying to set up another trilogy like Matrix, and maybe they'll try a little bit too hard. It's like I'd love to see where they go from here, even if they can go from here, even just like a smaller, tighter. But sometimes with sci-fi movies and movies in general, whether it's sci-fi or not, sometimes when people have too big a budget,
they feel like they have to use that whole
everything
budget.
at the
They're
budget.
like, oh, we got $200 million. We got to use up this $200 million, so we got to add more CGI. We got to add this.
Yeah.
We got to do more
that was
fight
actually
scenes.
one of the reasons that caused the movie to be delayed, because they felt they needed to. They spent more money on CGI and the special effects because they didn't want to make sure it was perfect. And I could understand the vision they were going for. This is kind of like the George Lucas problem. It's like visuals.
I thought about that the entire time. I'm like, this is the Star Wars the prequel trilogy.
Quite frankly, I found visuals in this much more appealing than I did when George Lucas revamped everything over and over again.
That's a special edition,
but that's here nor there.
But if I can explain what I mean by more questions, you should leave with less questions than going into it. Like Inception, nobody knew it. Like, you had a vague idea it has something to do with dreams. There's multiple levels. You can go in dreams. I want to learn more.
That was also Wachowski's brothers.
No, that was Chris Nolan.
That was Nolan. Okay, I thought the Wachowski's brothers had a hand in that.
Oh, no.
Okay.
But anyway, that movie, you had a bunch of questions going in. What's Leo's deal? How is he involved? Ken Watanabe and Tom Hardy and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, all these characters, how does it work together? And what is involved? And they answer a lot of this. You understand what the layers are, and what a kick is, and how dreams work. It's explained to you, and what is Inception. But then you get out of the movie and you're like, where's it going to go from here? I'm curious, is he really awake? Is he still in a dream? So you do come out with questions, but those are the questions that you should come out with.
So for most part, I found 90% of all the important questions for this movie were answered, because it didn't really ask, this movie didn't really ask a lot of questions.
Well, no, my question is, what happens now to everybody?
That's a question most movies ask.
Well, this is kind of like the entire... They destroyed as far as we know, it's the primary facility for creating the glowing immortality liquid. So they've just destroyed the mint that creates,
or one of the
as far as we know, or what happened to the sister? She was in the first scene, and then she was in the scene with Mila Kunis, and we never see her again.
You almost wonder how much some of this movie also fell prey to the cutting room floor dilemma. It's like, okay, what are you going to keep in? What are you going to take out? They might have kept in some of the stuff they should take out, and then taken out some things they might have kept in more due to time and pacing. I think, like I said, it comes down to what I thought was actually the money problem. Okay, well, so all these are my special effects, have all these scenes that, okay, I'm trying to get a joke, and the joke goes a little bit too far.
Or too long, yeah.
Or too long. dialogue trying to set up somebody's life takes a little bit too long.
Yeah, there's
But,
this
like,
whole.
it's
Another example. There is this whole needlessly complex. The gray aliens are looking are sent as scouts to find Mila Kunis because they think. I don't even remember what tipped them off that they're like, yeah, I think there's royalty on that planet.
It was like some genetic program. Yeah, they were kind of a little vague like that, but then again, I'm not sure how half of that was like my head, me having the head cold, not being able to hear.
But so, her first encounter with them is in like, Mila Kunis is a Russian immigrant, and she works with the rest of her family. Her extended family all live in the same house. There's like 12 of them, and they work as house cleaners. At one point, I guess she's at one of their clients' house, and that woman is trying to figure out what dress to wear, and then the aliens attack, but then it wipes her memory, and that never comes into play ever again.
That's not true. That actually did come into play. So it actually got set. That's one of the things that got set up earlier with.
Well, no, that wasn't just a great thing. That was just kind of like, in general, people forget things. They never explain why people forget things on such the profound level that they do. Entire buildings are destroyed.
They said they like basically had technology to wipe because like one of the first things like when she was attacked, when Mila Kunis was first attacked by the gray thing, you see this glowing thing coming from his hand, and that right there told me okay, they had like some sort of neuralizer thing that like,
and yet she didn't totally forget. And she's playing with her phone like no one I've ever seen. Like she's doing like this with her smartphone.
Like,
I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
To me, that was more like a subconscious.
But I mean,
thing.
no one does that with their phone. No one does what she was doing.
You should hang out with some of my friends, man. They do that. I got friends who can't put down their damn phone.
Maybe
it's the newer generation, man.
Maybe. But also that led to the destruction of buildings and everything. There's this entire aerial fight scene where they basically clear out most of the Chicago skyline, and halfway through it, again, something that went too long. Halfway through it, I'm like, well, how are they going to explain that? And then they do explain it as, oh, well, people forget stuff, and we rebuild them overnight. I'm like, oh, well, then that makes the devastation like the impact of the devastation and the possibility of these fight scenes. Like, there's supposed to be some impact. Like, you don't, like, what if this happens? Oh, bad things happen. No, nothing happened. It was
no impact for the general populace. See, that didn't really bother
it was needlessly long, needlessly complex.
Yeah, I will say
ultimately it means nothing.
I thought like
we spent 10 minutes on nothing.
See, I thought her more beginning setup took much longer. The whole but like,
why did we have why did those guys?
It was like,
why is your father murdered?
It was like, yes.
Why is she born in a crate container?
That didn't bother me. See, we can both agree this movie did it. This movie.
I mean, that's nitpicking. I'll agree with that.
Yeah, this movie had this comes down to the pacing issues. This comes down to directors having way too much money. Yeah. And like one of my
not to say money, but going back. So after the aliens hit her, then they kidnapped the girl, and I think
they did kidnap her. They shot her.
They tested her, and then her cousin or something needed to work up like this weird story about her going into a maternity clinic to sell her eggs, which that's very profitable if you do that, so that he can buy a TV and she can buy a telescope. And the entire point of her getting into this is just so that the aliens could test her and then abduct her. And like, this is so needlessly complex. Why can't they just grab her at work like they did the last time and test her?
Yeah, that didn't, like I said, again, that didn't bother me so much. I'm not going. Like I said, I'm not saying the plot was perfect. It really, but for me, the movie had a charm. What I was trying to get back to is like the whole problem is like you got directors who have all this money. They spend so much money on like I gotta spend everything. I gotta make everything perfect. And a good, one of the most perfect low budget movies. I don't mean low budget as in a bad movie, but low budget to make it was
John Carpenter's The Thing.
Actually also was actually thinking The Crow. The Crow, you had the main actor died through half of the film. So how do they build up suspense? By cut shots, by using shadows, by using a very minimalistic approach. And a lot of times, less is more, as long as you do that less in the right spot.
Yeah. That being said, I'm curious to see if they do that less in a good way with Furious 7.
Yes, but then again, Furious 7 has
7, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yes, I'm definitely seeing Furious 7.
No, I'm just saying that's what it's called, right? Furious 7.
I believe so.
I've
yeah.
had people nitpick me on these reviews for not getting all the details 100%
Or Fast,
right.
Fury 7 or Fast 7.
The seventh Fast and Furious movie, the one after Paul Walker died.
For me, that's one of these. That's a movie you go to expecting to see a action adventure.
Yeah, that is a popcorn movie.
This movie too. This was an old school popcorn movie.
This, if you like the cheese, if you like Cheese Factor, you
Yeah,
can't argue with me on this one. There was huge Cheese Factor, and that's fine. I've said to everybody, you can like whatever movie you want. There is no shame in it. Just don't try to sell it off as something more than what it is. Don't tell me it's a good movie when it's a cheese movie. There's plenty of movies I like, which I know are complete and utter crap. The new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. I enjoyed that movie. It is a steaming pile of crap. It is god-awful in terms of quality, but I enjoyed it for the nostalgia factor. We can agree with that.
There is a charm to this movie, and if you can go into understand, you're going into a space opera. It's more of a drama with action thrown in than this like huge epic adventure like Star Wars. You're going to like a movie with political intrigue that was definitely setting up for other movies to continue this intrigue in. And like this movie has me, I'd love to see where it goes from here, because you still got these two other siblings going around, and like that whole political intrigue that like these people just ain't going to let it go.
Which again, these siblings, and they're not the only ones where something is established and then immediately goes nowhere. Like the sister disappears into nowhere. The brother, after being accused of murder or like setting up for murder, he basically admits it.
Yeah.
He just kind of walks away. There's a lot of things that like people show up and then they walk out and you never hear from them again.
I think we talked about when we had like just way too many characters going on, that they had like condensed it down to like two siblings and just had one as a main character. They tried a little bit too hard. If they had dialed it down, like I think like we already said, that's half an hour too long.
There were things that just, we're gonna wrap it up in a second, but
yes.
like things, my ultimate problem with the movie is things that just didn't make sense, things that went nowhere, things that were needlessly complex. There is a scene when Sean Bean gets introduced, his daughter gets introduced. I don't know why she was introduced. She only has like 2 speaking parts, and she never.
Well, he did mention her earlier because like this was the daughter was a humanizing part of Sean Bean, and for me that came back later when you understood why.
But she was so inconsequential ultimately. But Sean Bean lives in a house that is held together, I kid you not, by bee wax. There are just honeybees everywhere, in his kitchen, outside, everywhere. Just there's bee combs everywhere with honey everywhere. Who does that?
An alien.
Why would you do that? And the entire point of that, because they never ever address that there's bees, except when for some reason they start swarming around her, but in a gentle, very going with her kind of way. And he turns to her and is like, "Wow, you must be royalty. They only do that to royalty." That was the only reason that those bees were there.
I got the impression that he was setting up for some sort of warning factor. But
then it never happens.
It's like there are a lot of things that it's like it was. Why is he doing this? And like but I didn't really think too much about it. I get where the plot point, while they were trying to make this plot point. Like I said, I'm not saying it's perfect.
No, but like everyone is an idiot in this movie too. Wait. Nobody is trustworthy. Literally, nobody.
No.
Except Mila Kunis is trustworthy.
And Channing Tatum.
Didn't she, at one point, he lie to her?
He never lied. He never lied to her.
He omitted.
He omitted, but he never betrayed her.
Yeah, he never betrayed her. Other than those two, constantly, there's this scene at the end when they're going into the facility in the Great Storm of Jupiter, where they're betrayed, and they're so surprised, like, "Oh, we were betrayed! I didn't see that coming!"
They really weren't surprised. I think that scene could have been played out a little bit more, because they didn't trust him going in. That's why they followed him. I think they could have made better precautions.
Everybody trusts...
That's one of those movie leaps of logic that, like, okay, we're going to have to... It's like, there's a scene movie, okay, why are they going along with this? Because they kind of have to push the plot along. Again, they
could have given him the slip. Instead of like going in and needing to pull out, they could have just given him the slip.
One thing I really have to say is though, I really did like Channing Tatum's character. I agree. Channing Tatum was good. Really coming on into his own, and as an actor, and I'm one of these people. I have always liked Channing Tatum.
Me too.
From when
actually.
I first watched him, and he keeps on getting better and better in everything he
I agree.
does. He's very athletic, and you can see he's doing a lot of his own stunts. He has enough pathos, enough humor to him, and his character is so interesting. I'd even love to see a movie just with his character alone.
Yeah.
He has his character, so the way he portrayed this character.
A spin-off, like the origins of him, or even what he does after this.
Yeah,
or even if there's a crossover where it shows the events of his life leading up to and then meeting Mila Kunis in this movie.
There
and then,
is
I would love
some
to see that.
gold in this movie. It's like I said, there's a charm to this movie, but like maybe like you said, I'll give you some points. Maybe it's not the big sci-fi epic everybody thought, but it also, for me, and I said this way back when we were talking about doing this, this movie looked like it was a throwback to some of those older sci-fi movies, and that's kind of what it turned out to be.
All right, final thoughts, but I do have to bring up my last
Your last point.
Yeah, my last point is that this movie, the wheels kind of came off in terms of logic at the end of this movie. The entire time that she's inside the facility, the weird talking brother is trying to get her to sign over the deed to Earth to him, and just the conversation. He's like, you're in no position to no position to negotiate, because she's trying to save her family who's been kidnapped and brought there and is going to be disemboweled and dissected if she doesn't agree. And she starts to cave to this guy, and I'm like, wait. You are in a position to negotiate. You're the one with all the power. And at one point,
but the thing, you got it's also you got people with a gun to your family, and finally
then like 2 minutes later, she's like, "Wait, no, screw my family and me."
Because finally freaking, it's like one of those things where finally clicks for her. It's like, hold up, I actually do have the power.
Yes,
and
I was like, oh, come
on. That didn't bother me, because that's the arrogance of villainy for a character. Like I said, this character was a little bit too over the top, and they tried to get that over the top, super maniacal villainous thing, and
failing big time about it.
I think they tried a little bit too hard with the character. He's like,
and after Channing Tatum crashes through, somehow a giant warship couldn't break the barrier, but this little dinky fighter could. And then just crashing into a few pylons.
Speed velocities. That's
crashing into a few.
Avon calling.
Again, warship couldn't crash into it, couldn't break this barrier, but this little fighter could. And then
warship, they have the velocity to make at the time. I understand.
And then it crashes into a few things, which sets this entire facility into just falling up. Like
that's because the gas from the storm.
Yes. Who doesn't plan for this when you build a facility inside a giant hurricane 3 times the size of Earth? Who doesn't think of fail-safes? Who doesn't think of backup plans? What if that happens?
Was his first words. Seal it. But
secondly, also at one point, and then he rescues her, and he turns to her, and he's like, "Go save your family." I don't know where she takes him. She starts wheeling him out into the hallway. There's no ship waiting for them.
As you can see,
she's just wheeling him out, and then at one point he's running through the. And I'm like, where are you running? You're running just random places.
This is like the conflict between the two of us. So the only thing,
have to, if you're gonna watch this movie and enjoy it, you do have to turn off your brain. Because if you try to think about this, everything falls apart.
And when you overthink about it,
I don't
end up
having
connections that
I really was. I'm like, where the fuck is she taking her family?
Where is she going
with it? Anyway, so that's the end of this review, because he stopped taking it seriously, and I will admit that I'm getting into it.
Because we will be here forever.
Yeah. But I gotta get some Advil, and I gotta get home, because I just finished filming the season 2 finale episode of Life with Ponies. If it's not up tonight, it will be up tomorrow night.
Check that out, everyone.
Alright guys, later.
Later, guys.